All right, so welcome to episode 92 of Farm to Markets. This is the show where participants get 5 minutes to state their opinions, and the person with the most time at the end wins, but there are no prizes. Today we are talking about Fitch downgrading the United States credit rating, artificial intelligence companies using public material or private material or copyrighted material to train their artificial intelligence platforms. Malls using Cameos to break bad news, and new airport scanners. Sorry, you could tell I didn't write that ahead of time. All right. Fitch downgraded the United States from a AA plus to a AA plus credit rating from a AAA credit rating late on Tuesday, citing expected fiscal deterioration over the next 3 years, as well as growing government debt. Fitch was the second major agency to cut credit ratings. In 2011, Standard & Poor's stripped the United States of its AAA grade down to like AA plus. So they did the same thing in 2011. Do you think this is something that markets should be selling off on, or do you think they're just overreacting? I mean, they did this in 2011. They're doing it again. The market sold off today. People seem to be a little bit panicky about it. Do you think that's overblown?
Well, as you alluded to, this has happened before. It happened in 2011, but it's also happened about 6 other times by various credit rating agencies around the world between 2011 and now. It hasn't really done a whole lot to temper the enthusiasm for U.S. government debt yet. I'm not sure that this one's going to have a major impact. It makes headlines because it's a U.S.-based agency. It's going to make headlines in the U.S. The average person's going to be talking about it. Nobody cares when, like a Chinese bank's credit rating agency downgrades U.S. debt, or a Swiss one, or whatever. So I don't think it's going to be devastating. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of a sell-off because of it. As far as what this means for investors and should we be selling off, I don't know. I don't think so yet. There was an interesting survey that I saw a while back. It said that a country has to reach 180% debt to GDP before it really has a real risk of default. And since the Federal Reserve System was instituted, every country around the world that has reached 180% debt to GDP has defaulted on its debt, except for one, and that would be us. So those defaults can take one of two forms. It's either going to be an actual default where they literally miss one or multiple payments or stop paying their debt completely, or kind of a de facto default, meaning they fire up the printing press and pay everybody back with devalued money. I don't think we're at any real risk of actually missing debt payments unless we're going to do a political theater thing with it. I do think there's a very real risk of us just firing up the printing press and repaying our debt with devalued money. That said, we did briefly touch 180% debt to GDP during that quarter where GDP was annihilated due to all the COVID lockdowns, but since then it's pulled way back to like 130% range. So I guess we'll see. I don't think, like I mentioned, that there's an actual risk that people are not going to get repaid over, the medium term. Maybe you should start thinking about whether or not the money you're getting repaid with is as valuable as it is today.
So basically, this is a downgrade of the U.S. economy's credit score, so to speak, which means the world just lost a little bit of faith in the U.S. economy, the U.S. dollar, and U.S. debt. So should the markets react to this? I don't really like that word should. I would rather they didn't, but will they? I think so. And as we've seen today, at least in day one, they have reacted. In 2011 was a little rough after after Standard & Poor's downgraded the credit score as well. But remember, the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. Where else are we going to go? The whole world trusts it. Most sovereign funds keep the majority of their liquidity in U.S. dollars, and now it just got hurt. Granted, it's only a small drop in the bucket. It's only a small drop in the rating, but it will have some effects. The bottom line is, I think the cost of capital is going to go up a little bit. In other words, the cost for the U.S. to borrow money and to fund our deficit spending will go up a little bit. Just like a credit score for people, the credit score for the U.S. just got dinged, and this will result in higher borrowing costs, I think. So for us, this might mean that the cost of mortgages could go up, the cost of car loans and lines of credit could go up, but I think that the markets will take the biggest blow from this. In fact, treasuries might even see some gains. If we're basing our predictions off of history, looking back at 2011, when the S&P downgraded the U.S. Credit to AA plus, bonds actually went up and stocks went down. So, I guess we'll see what happens, but it'll certainly affect the markets in one way or another.
It certainly is going to impact the markets. It's really going to affect the bond markets, because a lot of companies, they get their own credit ratings based on their own balance sheets. And if they have lots and lots of treasury bills in their portfolios, and their portfolio gets downgraded, it just kind of ratchets it down in terms of their own credit ratings, which will impact the value of those bonds. Guess who the largest purchaser of bonds are? It's insurance companies and banks. And so if those banks start getting downgraded, and banks now have to come up with more liquidity to cover their own risk adjustments, they're going to pass those costs on to their borrowers. So this is like the ratchet effect of 2008, when you had a lot of bonds getting thrown into the market all at the same time, and those bond prices went down. It had a cascading effect on our economy, because you might have had a bond that was relatively safe, but if it gets downgraded to triple B, and then all of a sudden they need to come up with some quick cash, and they got to sell some of their triple B rated bonds, and there's no market for it, those bonds could drop from 80 cents on the dollar to 60 cents on the dollar overnight. So I think there's going to be lots of volatility as a result of this. But in the long run, to Drew's point, we're the reserve currency. If we're AA plus, what's everybody else? Everybody else is going to have to downgrade accordingly.
One interesting thing I've been watching is interest as a percentage of GDP on the Fred economic data website. And right now, even as interest rates come up, total interest relative to GDP is not even close to the highest it's ever been. I mean, like in the 1990s, I think in 1990 actually looks like, 1990. It looks like it peaked in 1990. And so like right now we're like tied for where it was in 1945, and then sometime like right around 1980. So it's still got a ways to go before interest payments are as high as they were. Interest payments relative to GDP are as high as they ever been, because right now they're certainly not. The 90s, pretty much from the start of 1980 all the way through 1995, interest payments relative to GDP was way higher than it is today. I mean, it's certainly coming up a little bit, and if it gets any higher, I might be a little bit more concerned. But right now, like while that is still relatively low, I'm not as concerned as people make it out to be. And like I think you guys have all said already, if the U.S. defaults on all their debt, I mean that's good game everybody else, because I mean everybody else, the US owes people money, but they also owe the US money. So it's like at that point it's the Greek, remember through that Greek debt crisis, was that in 2011 too, or was it like 2000,
then
maybe 2015? But basically what ended up happening is like we had all that austerity stuff, and we just worked out a handshake agreement where it says like technically you failed, but we're just gonna find you a way out of this. And I would imagine if things start getting too dicey, everybody's just gonna be like, all right, let's this is all just a man-made thing anyways. Let's just maybe we'll just buy infinity bonds and never have to pay the debt back. So I don't think we're there yet. And certainly concerning when we have to get to that point. But I don't think there's going to be any short term, I mean, there's going to be volatility, but I don't think there's going to be like real short-term consequences because we got our credit rating downgraded.
Right. Plus, to Alex's point, we could just print more money.
Right.
Yeah. Out of money, just print more.
Yeah, unlike the Greeks.
Right. Yeah. I probably shouldn't have watched this, but when I was young, I watched some of the Austin Powers movies, and there was that scene where Mike Myers is about to get hit by a steamroller, and they show him he's just like ah, and then the scene ends up taking like a full 3 minutes. of like him waiting to get hit by a steamroller, because they made it seem like he was going to get hit right away, but when they panned out, the steamroller was like 100 yards away from him, so he's just sitting there waiting to get hit. But he has all the time in the world to like get out of the way, and I feel like that's kind of where we're at. Is that we're like, oh, we're gonna get hit by the steamroller, but when you pan out, it's like there's actually going to be a lot between when things get real bad and where we're at now.
I will add, it in a sick way. It's slightly refreshing just to see these credit agencies doing their job in reporting when the U.S. credit does go down. Because I'll be honest, I lost a little faith in them during the 2008 financial crisis when there was some shady stuff going down. Maybe these three credit rating agencies weren't giving accurate credit reports. And at the end of the day, the people that get these credit scores pay Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's for these. So there is kind of this perverse incentive. So I do like to see them blowing the whistle and say, hey, U.S. economy, your credit score is going down. You need to do something about it. And maybe our politicians in D.C. can actually do something about it.
Okay. Man, this has been wordy today. We're already almost out of time. So artificial intelligence companies, including OpenAI, its backer, and Google its backer, Microsoft, and Google built generative AI systems such as ChatGPT and the Bard by scraping oceans of information from the internet and feeding it into a training algorithm that teaches the system to imitate human speech. The companies generally say they use data without compensation. That data used without compensation is permitted, but they have left the door open to discussing the issue with content creators. Early in July, thousands of authors, including Margaret Atwood, James Peterson, signed an open letter demanding that top AI companies obtain permission and pay writers for the use of their works to train generative AI models. Comedians such as Sarah Silverman and other authors also filed lawsuit against OpenAI, Facebook parent company Meta Platforms, for allegedly training their AI models on illegal copies of the book and were captured and left on the internet. Do you think content creators should be compensated for helping to train these generative AI models?
Ultimately, I think the answer to that is no. And the reason is, unless the content creator is working directly with the company to help train them, I'm not sure that there's really much of anything that they can do to stop these companies from just training their AIs by doing little more than what Google does with its business model. Think about what Google does. There's millions and millions and millions of websites and web pages and all this stuff that's available publicly. Some of that content is uploaded illegally. It's uploaded without copyright permission, that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter. Google crawls all of it, puts it in an order that it thinks is going to be relevant to you, and then displays it to you. If Google's not compensating, Margaret Atwood, because if I type in, PDF of The Handmaid's Tale, then why would Google do the same thing with its AI model? And even if you thought maybe they should, you're just kind of opening the door for how many millions and millions of content creators are going to have to start cutting fractions of a cent's worth of a check for every time the AI crawls their webpage. I think it's largely impractical, and I don't think it's going to happen. Whether or not it should, maybe, but I think the entire web is built on the idea that all this stuff is available online, and search engines search it and display it to you anyway. So I don't think it's going to happen.
I think that the authors, the actors, these comedians, I guess any other professional that's affected by this AI technology, I think they're less concerned about getting a check cut from these AI companies, and they're just expressing their concern that AI might take their jobs away. I think that's the real crisis. But this is all very, very new. We haven't seen this legal battle before, so there's no course of action to base which direction this might go. The big question is, if AI is responsible for paying every source of information, like Alex said, how do these AI companies possibly pay every person, and how much would that be for? The way I see it, if I can go on the internet and I can find the works of James Patterson and Sarah Silverman, and I can synthesize that information with other stuff out there and create something new, do I owe anything to these people? And if I can do it, why can't AI do it too?
I think we're looking at it from the vantage point of we're currently getting access to AI for free. If it gets to the point where we're so addicted to AI on a personal level, then all of a sudden they roll out and they say, hey, the free AI is no longer available. It's now going to cost you $19.99 a month to have a subscription to AI. I think you'll have a much different sympathy for the winners and losers in this. If they're taking this content for free and then charging for the AI that was created with this free material, I think that the marketplace is going to balk and say, hey, if you're going to charge us, then the content creators that you're using should be also compensated. I think it's all a matter of what the public opinion says will be directing where this all goes.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little on the fence with if they give you if they buy a copy of Sarah Silverman's book, like one copy, feed it to the training model, and the training model has a better understanding of human language based on that book. It's like they haven't really given away Sarah Silverman's book. They just used it to train the model, which I don't think it doesn't tell you what Sarah Silverman's book's about, or so I guess like if it was like publishing her book or like giving you data from the book for free, I would be a little bit concerned about it. One thing I have been doing to save time is I've been taking news articles behind paywalls, taking the link, dumping it into the to Google Bard. I'm like, hey, summarize this article for me, and it'll read the article, summarize it for me, and I don't have to pay for it. So,
you're the
nice.
problem.
Yeah.
You are the problem.
You're a freeloader.
Yeah, but I mean, like, look, I mean, like, I don't, I don't know, but that. So I think that is an issue. I don't necessarily think using it to train the model is so much an issue. But yeah, if I can get behind a paywall and just get the bullet points, which is what I really want, anyways, I think that's more of an issue. All right, we gotta get going here. All right, so older low-end malls are worth at least 50% of their value, and in some cases more than 70% less than they were when mall valuations peaked in late 2016. Head of the okay. What do you think the future is for U.S. malls? I mean, do you think they're going to be repurposed, or what do you think? What do you think is going to happen to them?
I think the really big centrally located ones are going to chart a path forward. Look at something like Mall of America. They're still making money hand over fist. They have like theme parks and attractions and stuff like that. Others are bringing back movie theaters, or some are bringing in farmers markets and like community spaces for, groups and events kind of stuff. So I think big malls that can leverage their size can do stuff like that. Small to mid-sized malls, they're basically dead men walking if they're not already dead. A combination of the smaller strip malls plus online shopping has pretty much already killed them off. So for the small to mid-sized malls, there is basically no future. Big ones, I think they'll be okay.
I agree with Alex. I don't think they're going to completely disappear. I think the future for malls is looking pretty bleak. At least for the way traditional malls are set up. I don't think they're going to be like the VHS or the Blockbusters and completely go away. But more and more people are shopping online. They're shifting their business online. So these companies are probably going to shift their business online as well and do less brick and mortar stores.
I think that the malls will essentially have to come up with a new paradigm on how they're going to attract teeny boppers and tweeners and teenagers, because that's kind of where the money's been made in malls for the last 25 years. It's been a place where young people have hung out. And if they're smart, they'll figure out what they can do to attract young people to come back to those places. Maybe it'll be theme parks, maybe it'll be like the internet cafe of some sort or whatever. But until they recapture that market, I think that piece of real estate is going to stay dead until somebody figures out another way to market to some of the biggest discretionary spenders in our economy.
I bet they become Amazon distribution centers. So we're running out of time here. So real quick, I saw in the Wall Street Journal that some people, you can hire a D-list actor to personalize a message to you, and some people have been using it to deliver bad news like breakups or divorces and stuff like that. What do you think about using a Cameo to deliver bad news?
I think it's hilarious, but I probably would never do it. So yeah, pretty entertaining.
I think it's silly. It's, people might have fun with it, but I personally would never do it. That's weird. I would just, it's strange.
It sounds almost like a Saturday Night Live skit. I don't think I'd ever do it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel like if somebody's like, "Hey, I don't like you," but it was like a cameo. I don't know. It might deaden the blow a little bit. Who knows? So, all right, that's it for episode 92 of Farming Markets. We'll see you next week.